Let me paint you a picture. It's 7:12 in the morning. You're standing on your porch in slippers and a bathrobe. Coffee half full. Breath caught in your throat. There's a bulldozer halfway down your driveway. And the ground is collapsing like a soggy cardboard box under its weight. Sirens wail in the distance. Your grandmother is sobbing. And there, standing at the edge of the chaos like she just ordered brunch, is a woman in a peach tracksuit holding a glass of iced tea. Her name is Karen Whitmore, president of the Maple Ridge HOA. And 5 minutes ago, she personally oversaw the destruction of a federally registered Cold War-era military tunnel built in 1952 by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Yeah. This isn't just a story. This is a full-blown suburban Greek tragedy with paperwork. But to understand how we got here, how a tunnel turned into a battlefield, you need to rewind about 4 months. Back when the worst thing Karen had done was scream at squirrels for unauthorized seed dispersal. When I moved back to my late grandfather's house last year, it was supposed to be temporary. Just a pit stop while I figured out my next move after losing my job and my apartment. The house was old but dignified, ivy-covered stone walls, a little creek out back, and a garden that hadn't seen a lawnmower in 2 presidential administrations. My grandfather built part of it himself. The rest? Government tissue concrete and steel. Buried beneath the earth in a tunnel that connected the property to a reinforced Cold War bunker. That tunnel wasn't a myth. It wasn't some conspiracy theory. It was real. It was documented. It was even featured in the State Heritage Quarterly as a forgotten monument of American readiness. My grandfather had overseen its construction during his time as an Army engineer and spent his retirement showing it off to local students and history nerds. Then Karen moved in. She showed up out of nowhere. Really? 1 week she was the woman who stole other people's newspaper bundles for recycling purposes. And the next she was the newly elected president of the HOA. Thanks to a vote held at 10 a.m. on a Wednesday when no one except her friends and a stray raccoon were home. Her first email was about trash bins. Her second was about mailbox dimensions. Her third, "You are in violation of the Maple Ridge Uniform Design and Compliance Standards. Section 4B. Due to the presence of an unauthorized subterranean structure." I blinked at the screen. I read it again. Then I laughed out loud because surely she didn't mean that structure. The one built under contract with the U.S. Army. The one registered with the State Office of Historical Preservation. The one older than Karen. HOA bylaws. And the actual subdivision. But oh, she meant it. She came to my door one afternoon, clipboard in hand, sunglasses on like a suburban Secret Service agent, and said, "Mr. Reynolds, the tunnel must go. It's a safety risk. An eyesore. And a violation of the neighborhood aesthetic." I invited her in for tea. I showed her the documentation, maps, historical registry listings, even a photo of Senator Byron Trent shaking my grandfather's hand in front of the tunnel back in 1963. Karen flipped through the pages like they were IKEA instructions, scoffed, and said, "This isn't a museum. This is a community. And communities have standards." I was polite. At first. I explained that the structure was federally exempt, grandfathered in before HOA even existed, and part of a preserved historical program. She told me she'd spoken to a compliance consultant, as if that meant anything, and was told it was non-conforming. That was the first time I saw it, the glint in her eye. The one that said, "I don't care what's legal. I care what's pretty." 2 weeks later, she sent a notice. Then a fine. Then a final compliance warning. I responded with copies of state permits, letters from the Preservation Board, and even the original Army Corps engineering plans. She ignored them all. And then one morning, she trespassed onto the property, clipboard in hand again, peering over the garden toward where the tunnel ran beneath. "What exactly are you doing?" I asked. She didn't even flinch. "Documenting non-compliance," she said flatly. "For whom? Your dream journal?" She gave a tight smile. "For the record. We're proceeding with enforcement action. I looked at her and said, "You're about to make a very big mistake." She sipped her iced tea and replied, "I don't make mistakes. I make improvements." That, my friends, was the moment I realized something terrifying. Karen wasn't just drunk on power. She thought she was the law. And she had no idea the tunnel she was trying to erase wasn't just concrete, it was classified history. And the storm she was about to unleash, it would make her clipboard look like a matchstick in a hurricane. If part 1 was a slow boil of suburban insanity, this is where the pot boiled over. It happened on a Tuesday. Tuesdays always feel cursed in neighborhoods like Maple Ridge. Maybe it's because garbage trucks come at 6 a.m. Or maybe because HOA board meetings are usually scheduled for then, before most people have had the sense to drink coffee or consult legal counsel. That morning, I was woken up not by an alarm clock, but by the deep, guttural clank of metal meeting concrete. And then, thud, crack, crunch. I shot out of bed. I wasn't wearing shoes. I didn't need them. I sprinted outside, heart pounding, and saw something I never thought I'd witness on our quiet cul-de-sac. A bulldozer. An honest-to-God bulldozer. Halfway down our driveway. Its metal teeth chewing through the earth like it was biting into history. The operator looked confused, young guy. Maybe in his 20s. Wearing a high-vis vest that said J&M Contracting. He was staring at the collapsed front section of the tunnel with the face of a man who had just realized he stepped into someone else's war. Behind him, standing on the grass like she was admiring a freshly trimmed hedge, was Karen Whitmore. Iced tea in hand, sunglasses on, clipboard tucked under her arm like the Constitution was a homeowner's checklist. "What are you doing?" I yelled over the grinding metal and collapsing stone. Karen didn't even blink. "Enforcement," she said calmly. Like this was just another Tuesday chore between Pilates and pest control. Are you insane? That's a registered federal structure. You're not authorized." She cut me off. "Actually, I am. The board approved removal of hazardous, non-compliant subterranean features. It's in the minutes. You didn't get a permit. You didn't even notify the county." "I consulted a compliance consultant," she said, sipping her tea. "This structure posed a risk to neighborhood aesthetics and public safety." That's when the tunnel roof gave way. Years of concrete crumbled like stale biscotti. A chunk of lawn dropped several feet. A nearby tree tilted unnaturally. And my grandmother, who had been standing on the porch, dropped her mug. Literally, it shattered on the steps as she gasped. One hand clutched to her chest. "Oh my God," she whispered. What has she done?" By now, neighbors had come outside. A few were filming. A few were calling 911. One guy from down the block shouted, "Is that a gas line?" And just like that, someone screamed it might explode. And panic took root. Sirens. Fast and shrill. Red and blue lights flashing at the edge of the street. The first responders arrived within minutes, firefighters, paramedics, and a local sheriff's deputy. One of the fire captains jogged up to me while the others approached the equipment. "Any injuries?" he asked. "My grandmother's in shock," I said, pointing to her. "And this whole site, it's not just a tunnel. It's a protected Cold War relic. Built by the Army Corps in '52. He blinked. "You're serious?" I handed him a manila folder, one I had printed, scanned, emailed, faxed, and hand-delivered to Karen 2 months ago. He flipped it open. His face changed immediately. "Chief," he called into his radio, "we're gonna need a state inspector out here. Possibly federal. This isn't just a sinkhole." Meanwhile, Karen looked confused. Not shocked. Not horrified. Just mildly irritated. Like someone had told her the HOA bake sale was postponed due to rain. "Ms. Whitmore." The deputy approached her. "Did you authorize this demolition?" "I acted under HOA enforcement guidelines," she answered, straightening her posture. "It was an unregistered structure." "Actually," I interjected, "it's registered with the State Historic Preservation Office and the Federal Heritage Program." I sent her all the documents. Multiple times. The firefighter held up the folder. It's right here. And you, Mom. He turned to Karen. Just turned a protected site into a crime scene for the first time. She faltered just a twitch. Her fingers tensed around the glass. Her lips parted slightly. But she didn't speak. She couldn't. Because there was no HOA bylaw that could shield her from this level of screwed. The operator stepped down from the bulldozer. Clearly rattled. She didn't say it was federal. He muttered. Said it was debris. Said it was just an old sewer line or something. He looked at me. Then at the tunnel. Man. I didn't know. I swear. You're not the one I'm worried about. I replied. That's when I knew, this wasn't going to be a fine. This wasn't going to be a slap on the wrist or a stern email from City Hall. This was going federal. And Karen? Karen had just committed a felony. In flip-flops. The thing about bureaucracy is, when it works in your favor, it's beautiful. After the dust, well, concrete dust, settled and the last of the emergency crews rolled out, I went into action. Not just a response, but a legal siege. By sundown that same day, I was on the phone with the State Historical Preservation Board, walking them through what had happened. They were stunned. One representative, a man named Morris with a voice like gravel and too many years in the field, said bluntly, if she bulldozed a registered Cold War relic without a permit, that's not just civil, it's federal. Music to my ears. The next day, I hand-delivered a flash drive to the board's regional office. It contained everything, emails, scanned letters, HOA notices, and security cam footage from our porch showing Karen pointing and giving directions to the bulldozer operator like she was conducting a damn orchestra. There was even a clip, bless my doorbell camera, that captured her exact words, just rip it up. Doesn't matter what it used to be. It's not staying on my street. The reaction from the board? Immediate. A state preservation officer came out the next morning. Then a city zoning rep. Then a man in a navy blazer who introduced himself only as federal liaison. He said it like it came with handcuffs. Karen wasn't around for any of it. She had gone dark. No morning jog. No clipboard crusades. No notes taped to mailboxes. But it didn't matter, because the story didn't stay quiet. One of the neighbors, probably the guy who always live streams HOA meetings on Facebook, tipped off the local news. By 3 p.m., a news van rolled up. Their reporter, a woman named Danya, sharp as a tack and twice as cutting, asked if she could interview my grandmother. Despite still recovering from the shock, my grandmother stood in front of the camera in her best floral blouse and said calmly, my husband built that tunnel to protect his country. He never imagined it would be destroyed by someone who wanted matching mailboxes. I swear. I saw the cameraman's jaw drop. That quote, it blew up. By that evening, it was on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, even a Cold War history forum called Atomic Times. People from around the country were chiming in, retired veterans, historians, folks who just hated HOAs in general. The headline read, HOA President Destroys Cold War Landmark in Suburban Power Trip Gone Wrong. And Karen? Karen wasn't just the villain. She was becoming national news. One local paper published a satirical cartoon of her riding a bulldozer over the Bill of Rights while sipping iced tea. I printed that one and taped it to our fridge. But the real blow didn't come from public outrage. It came from her own insurance provider. Turns out, the Maple Ridge HOA had a general liability policy, one that required proper authorization and legal compliance for any major structural alterations. And guess what? Karen had violated every clause. The demolition was unauthorized. There was no vote. No permits. No inspections. The HOA's insurance company issued a formal statement 2 days after the collapse, due to the non-compliant nature of the action taken, and the lack of legal approval. The damages incurred will not be covered under the current HOA policy. The HOA, and by extension its acting decision-maker, assumes full financial liability. Translation: Karen had just dropped a six-figure sinkhole into the HOA's lap. And now she was personally exposed. Word spread fast. The community app, which Karen had once used to post decorative fencing standards, was now an open flame war. Threads titled "Karen the Khaki Kraken" and "Destroyer of Bunkers" dominated the feed. One neighbor posted a screenshot of the email I had sent to Karen weeks before the demolition, complete with historic documentation, which she had ignored. Another neighbor shared that Karen had fined them $50 last month for having a non-compliant wind chime. That same neighbor now put up 36 wind chimes in their yard in protest. The HOA clubhouse, locked, dark, silent. Karen had vanished, retreated into her perfectly trimmed hedges, hoping the chaos would blow over. But this wasn't just neighborhood gossip anymore. It was a legal storm. And she was at the eye of it. By the end of that week, the HOA board was in shambles. 2 members resigned, one citing emotional distress, the other claiming they weren't fully informed about the Bulldozer situation, which was the suburban equivalent of saying I just held the torch. I didn't light the bonfire. The treasurer, previously Karen's biggest defender, released a public statement. Karen Whitmore acted without board consent, misused HOA funds, and violated community trust. I can no longer support her leadership. It hit like a thunderclap. And then came the letter, hand-delivered by a state officer in a navy blazer. Just to make sure it landed. Karen was being named in a civil suit by the State Historical Preservation Office for unlawful destruction of protected infrastructure. She wasn't charged criminally yet, but the lawsuit included financial penalties, possible restitution, and personal liability for violating multiple clauses of the Heritage Protection Act. The air in Maple Ridge changed. Gone were the clipped greetings and silent nods from neighbors afraid of HOA fines. Now, people waved. One woman baked cookies and left them on my grandmother's porch with a note that said, "Sorry we didn't speak up sooner." Even more surreal, the HOA called an emergency general meeting. And Karen showed up. She looked smaller, like a once fluffed peacock with no feathers left to strut. Her usual clipboard had been replaced by a manila folder. Behind her stood a lawyer who looked like he had just realized he was about to lose a case he didn't even know he was in. The clubhouse was packed. Neighbors who had never bothered with meetings were standing along the back wall. Some had printed out their own copies of the news article. One guy brought a mini replica of the Bulldozer made out of Legos and set it on the snack table. The board called the meeting to order. Karen tried to speak. "I'd like to clarify a few points," she said, her voice dry and defensive. "While I understand there have been misunderstandings, I want to assure everyone that my actions were motivated solely by the safety and harmony of our community." A hand shot up. "Mr. Kellerman lived here since the 60s. Army vet. He didn't even wait to be acknowledged. You tore down a Cold War landmark. You ignored legal warnings. And you lied about board approval. That's not leadership. That's vandalism in a pantsuit." Applause broke out. Karen stood there frozen, blinking like a buffering browser. A motion was made: remove Karen Whitmore as president of the Maple Ridge HOA. Effective immediately. No debate. No defense. Unanimous. Karen gathered her things quietly. No dramatic exit. No final threat. Just a quiet walk of shame past the same neighbors she used to fine for Halloween decorations. I overheard someone whisper, "So, who's gonna fix this mess?" And just like that, eyes turned to me. "No," I said, half laughing, half terrified. "Absolutely not." But the crowd wasn't having it. People started clapping. My grandmother even gave me that look, the one that says, "If you don't step up, I will." So I did. I became the new interim HOA president by neighborhood vote. The first thing I did, burn the rulebook. Figuratively. Legally. You can't just burn by laws. I checked. But I rewrote them. With help. 3 major changes. 1. Full transparency. All decisions would be public. Voting records. Meeting notes. HOA spending. Everything archived digitally. 2. Limited authority. No more power hoarding. No president could act unilaterally. All major decisions would require a vote from the full board and resident review. 3. Community historian. A new, honorary role. A living memory of the neighborhood's past. Someone who knew every house, every tree, every story. I gave that role to my grandmother. Her face lit up like Christmas morning. About time someone respected history around here, she said. The crowd cheered. Some even stood. It felt like we'd just declared HOA independence. But even in victory, I knew the story wasn't over. Karen may have been dethroned, but her decisions still left behind a crater, literally and legally. We still had to rebuild the tunnel, fight through insurance denials, coordinate with the preservation board, and clean up the mess left by years of unchecked ego. But for the first time in months, Maple Ridge felt like a neighborhood again, not a fiefdom. And I wasn't the only one ready to rebuild. 6 months later, where a bulldozer once cracked open the ground like an egg, the tunnel stood resurrected, stronger than ever. Federal emergency funding came through thanks to the national media coverage and the personal intervention of the State Historical Preservation Board. Restoration crews were flown in, architects, engineers, even a retired Army Corps historian who had actually studied tunnels like ours during his early career. This is Cold War gold. One of them whispered the first time he stepped into the newly cleared entrance. Do you know how rare it is to have one of these survive both time and a bulldozer? Believe me, we did. The work wasn't fast or cheap. They brought in seismic scanners, reinforced concrete experts, heritage stone workers. They didn't just rebuild it, they honored it. Every inch of the tunnel was resealed, catalogued, and preserved to exact 1950s military standards. Right down to the vertical exhaust shafts and the emergency ration shelves my grandfather had once stocked. Somewhere in the dust, they even found a pencil-marked height chart. My name was on it, right next to a scribbled age 7, Secret Agent HQ. I almost cried when I saw it. Meanwhile, Maple Ridge had changed. Without Karen's surveillance patrols, people started planting wildflowers. Wind chimes came back with a vengeance. A neighbor who had once been fined for improper Christmas light symmetry now put up Halloween inflatables in July, just for the heck of it. But Karen? She wasn't quite free to ride off into the HOA sunset. After her removal and the civil suit, she tried one last-ditch maneuver, claiming she had been the victim of online harassment and neighborhood retaliation. Her new lawyer, not the courtroom soap opera guy, this one had actual degrees, filed a complaint attempting to delay the case. It didn't work, because in addition to being held financially liable for a portion of the damages not covered by insurance, the judge had issued a unique community restitution order. Rather than just fine her and move on, the court decided Karen needed to contribute to repairing what she tried to erase. And so, in an irony so pure it could power a small town, Karen Whitmore, former tyrant of the trash bins, bulldozer-in-chief of suburban history, was now legally obligated to serve 120 hours of community education service under the guidance of the State Historical Society. Her assignment? Assist with monthly tours of the very tunnel she tried to destroy. Her role wasn't glamorous. She wasn't leading tours or speaking on camera. Nope. Karen's job, 3 Saturdays a month, was to stand at the entrance of the tunnel wearing a visitor badge and hand out historical pamphlets to tourists. She didn't even get to write them. I wrote them. I made sure the opening paragraph read, "This historic tunnel, once threatened by negligent suburban development, now stands as a testament to Cold War resilience, American engineering, and the power of preservation over pettiness." The first public tour day? That was unforgettable. Lines wrapped around the block. Kids in scout uniforms. College history students. Veterans. Tourists who'd read about it online and driven in from 3 states over. News crews returned. Reporters. Cameras. Mics. And my grandmother? She stood at the front of the first group, dressed in her Sunday best. a calm pride radiating from her as she took the mic and said, "My husband built this to protect his family. He never thought it had become history. But today, it protects something else, our memory." Applause. People actually wiped tears. Even one of the firefighters from the day of the collapse showed up. Now off duty. Just to see the miracle reborn. I turned and looked at Karen, standing awkwardly by the table of pamphlets. She was in khakis and a visitor polo. Sunglasses on despite the tunnel's shade. She looked up as I passed. And for a split second, just one, you could tell she remembered everything. The bulldozer. The iced tea. The moment she thought power made her invincible. Now she was the one answering questions from wide-eyed kids asking, "Wait, you destroyed it?" She didn't correct them, because how could she? Poetic justice doesn't need a punchline. It just needs time. And time had turned the ruins of arrogance into a shrine of humility. The story didn't end with a lawsuit. It didn't even end with the tunnel's restoration, because what came after was something bigger. We added the tunnel to the state's Cold War educational trail. Local schools booked field trips. A local museum offered to partner with us. We even launched a scholarship fund in my grandfather's name, open to any student pursuing historical preservation, engineering, or public service. The tunnel now outlives Karen's rule. Outlives the old HOA. And probably outlives all of us. That's the thing about legacy. You can't bulldoze it. No matter how many rules you write. You can try to cover it with dirt and denial. But eventually, someone digs it back up. And they remember. Always.